right. Hey, everyone. My name is George. I'm a developer support engineer here at Eighth Wall. I think quite a few of you probably know me at this point, whether you've been on our forums or community Discord or anything. I work on our sample projects, our documentation. I assist our customers. But also, I've got over 10 years of game developer experience, launched multiple titles on Steam. I've been working in games since early 2014 and even way before that too. I remember using Unity version 2 and it being like a total hot garbage mess, but still loving it. Um, but yeah, so that's just a little bit backstory about me. Um, I have a huge passion for making games and teaching people about games and how to make games and building cool stuff and I'm just really excited to be here and do this workshop with everyone. So yeah, let's talk about early ideation. So before you can work on anything, you need an idea. And how do I get ideas? This is something, this is a question I get all the time is like, oh, I've learned to code or like I know how to code, but like how do I start by building a game? And the first thing that you need to know about building a game is you have to have some idea, right? And with experience, with time, and with kind of building games comes the ability to just like manifest ideas out of thin air. But until you get to that point, you need some kind of methods for developing ideas. And these are kind of my two methods for developing ideas in general. So the first method is find assets, get inspired, and then make something fun. Or the second method, which is also very common, is to think of an existing game, add a twist, and then it's an instant hit on Steam. You're a millionaire and you never have to work again. If that happens to any of you, please don't forget me. Please put my name somewhere on the credits or add me on LinkedIn. Just don't forget me. But yeah, so for method number two, there's some popular examples there on the right. Super hot is just your standard FPS, but time only moves when you move. Balatro is a schizophrenic version of solitaire, and then Baba is You is very similar to like Sokoban or like the tile pushing game, but instead of you trying to get out, it's you turning yourself into other things. Um, so yeah, the second option hasn't worked for me yet, but when it does, when it does, so we can go. So these are the two methods, and we're gonna use method number one, but I always encourage everyone to use both these methods. So finding assets, I just compiled a really short list of places I usually go to find assets when I'm thinking for or when I'm looking for ideas. These are kind of my four go-tos. Just when I have free time, let me go browse what's new and see how I can put these things together and build something. The most important thing to me as a game developer, um, over the years of developing things, is it's really hard for me to work with things that aren't cohesive. Um, and so the benefit of using asset packs and things like that is that everything you get is going to be cohesive and easy to work with. Um, and then, once you develop your game mechanics and et cetera, then maybe you can go in and replace all that art with your own, or even just use the art that you're given. It's really all about just developing something fun. And I think we can get into actually, yeah. So let's go over the learning objectives. So the learning objectives for this workshop is how to break game development down into steps, how to go from idea to game, the best practices for smooth gameplay, and then publishing. Because this is something I've noticed a lot as working as a developer support engineer, is people always make these awesome things and they never publish it. So let's not forget to include the publishing step. So now I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to do a really quick uh look over for some assets, and then I'll kind of walk you through my process here, and then we'll actually start building it. So I went to one of the websites I linked, and these are all asset packs that are totally free. Um, so I was scrolling through here, and I was like, oh, I like pirates. Pirates are cool. And you can see here, this is what it comes with. So I was thinking, okay. So I put these into Studio, and I got the idea of rock, paper, scissors. So with that in mind, let's start a new project and kind of walk through it. Um, and I think we have the Google Drive folder, Pablo, if you could put that in the chat.
Yeah, it's in the chat now, but for those of you that are joining a little late, I'm going to go ahead and drop it again. This drive folder, you'll note, has a docs with um, all of the code, and then you'll see two GLTF models that are outside of the folder, the Pirates folder. Those are the two main ones that George is using. But if you want to download the whole Pirate kit, you can build out the background of your game and make it look cooler, by all
Yeah.
means. Yeah, you only really need two characters, and you can either pick Henry or Sharky, and then if you really have time, you can go to the folder and find another character if you'd like.
Yeah, one of the nice things about these asset packs too is like all the characters have the same animation rig and animation names, etc. So you can swap them in and out. You can have fun. You don't even have to make a pirate rock paper scissors game. You can make a aliens versus ninjas Tetris battle, whatever you want. Um, but the idea here is we're just going to kind of talk about how to take an existing game that might exist in real life and to kind of digitize it. So I'm going to go here to eighth wall and I'm going to create a new empty project. And I'm just going to walk through my steps of creating this game. So this is kind of my process for working on any game is I start a new project with the title of what I think it's going to be. 90% of the time, the game never ends up anything related to the title. The title ends up being some weird artifact of some idea I had 10 days ago. But for the sake of this workshop, we're going to do rock, paper, scissors, pirate edition. So what I like to do, like any other 3D software, delete the default cube, the poor default cube. Um, and let's just start by uploading two of our characters. So in this case, I'm going to upload Henry and Sharky, and those are provided in the Google Drive folder. You're not able to see this window for uploading the assets, right? Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. So let me show you what I did. So when you're working with GLTFs in Studio, it's a little bit different than a GLB. You have to go to upload and then, or sorry, you click the plus button and then you go to new asset bundle GLTF. This might be a little tricky to remember, but worst case scenario, you can always drag the GLTF into your assets folder and it will bring up the same thing as if you click the GLTF file. Under the hood, GLBs and GLTFs are just slightly different, and that's why they have two separate buttons for uploading. Um, but yeah, so now we're in this new GLTF asset bundle wizard. The nice thing about our GLTF models is that they come pre-packed with all the textures and stuff in them. So all we have to do really is just upload the asset. So we'll start with Henry, and we can see here we can preview his little animation. He's dying over and over. Um, we're just gonna upload him, and then let's do the same thing with Sharky. I go here to the characters folder, upload Sharky, same thing, cool. So we've got our two characters, but we need to put them in our scene. We need to set up our game. So before we do that, before we set up our game or do anything crazy, let's just drag our characters in and set them up as if they were going to do rock, paper, scissors, right? Um, And I like to organize my scenes so my characters are below everything else. And I'm going to put Henry on the right and Sharky on the left. And you'll see here under the positions, personally, I like to keep these at whole numbers just for the sake of working on things easier. So I'll do -1, 0, 0 for Sharky. And I'll do 1, 0, 0 for Henry. Um, and I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. And the way I imagine this working, and also don't forget if you feel like I'm going too fast or you feel like you've lost something, it's okay. Just keep following along. This is all recorded, so you can always watch it as many times as you want. You can pause it, etc., etc. So don't worry if you miss something. Just keep following along. And also once Q&A happens, we can go over something if anyone misses something or something's not clear. So we've got our two characters in our scene, but let's make them face each other. So I just selected Sharky and pressed the E button. It's a shortcut for switching to the rotate tool. And I'm going to make them face each other. I want this to feel like a battle. And what's really nice about this new playback stuff is if you used Eighth Wall in the past, you know that one of the most annoying things ever was having to constantly rebuild every single time you made a little change to your scene. For example, if I wanted to see what this camera's seeing. Um, Now, thankfully, you don't have to do that anymore. Um, Now with these new changes to the playback, we can actually press play on our scene here and adjust the camera as we need. So I'm going to select the camera and I'm going to move it around and you'll notice, ooh, it updates in real time now. So now we can position our camera way easier than we've ever had to do before. And like I did with the other things, I'm just gonna clean up these values a little bit. 5. Cool. So I've got our simulator open, I've got our characters ready to battle, but nothing's happening yet, right? So now we actually need to start building out our game logic. And this is the part, sorry, I instinctively hit the build button. Uh, this is the part where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people think, okay, I've laid out my things. Now where do I start? So let's think about rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors is actually it's simple, yet you have to break it down into steps. So let's think about the first step in rock, paper, scissors. The first step in rock, paper, scissors is that both players agree to play, and they've mentally decided, okay, now that we're playing, we're gonna make our move at the same time, right? Then 1, 2, 3, we make a move, right? And mentally, we choose from the list of the three possible moves that we could make. We think, okay, I could choose rock, I could choose paper, I could choose scissors. Um, and depending on those choices, the moment both people make the same choice and show it to each other, that's the moment where it's like the battle calculation, right? It's like who won, depending on what you've chosen. Um, and then after that, it's do you want to play again? Um, Now we could add stuff like a score counter, and maybe if you win 3 times, the other person explodes into a million bones or something cool like that. But for now, let's focus on the core mechanics. Um, and if we have time, maybe we can add some extra stuff. So what I'm gonna do is because our game is pretty straightforward, I'm just going to create a single game manager object. So I'm going to click this plus button up here and I'm going to click empty object. An empty object is just an object that does nothing. Purely serves as just a container for components. And with it selected, I'm going to go over here to the box and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call this game, you know what, let's just call this game. Uh, so now we've got this empty object called game with our two characters. But it's obviously not going to do anything yet because we haven't created a custom component. So now we need to create a custom component. So we're going to click this plus button here. We're going to go to new file and then new component file. And let's call this game as well. This is going to open up the new component file editor or the code editor. And the first thing I personally do is I clean it up. I get rid of all the comments because I worked with 8th Ball enough. I know what all this stuff does. Uh, And hopefully after this workshop, you'll feel the same way. I'm going to remove these two comments here. The second thing I like to do is I like to give the actual name of the component a better looking name. Um, and then I'm going to uncomment the state machine. I'm going to uncomment the data. And the way that I'm doing this is I'm just selecting what I want to uncomment and I'm holding command and pressing /. You could manually remove these slashes, but personally, I like to do it this way, the shortcut way. Um, so following that, I'm gonna uncomment out data, schema defaults, and schema. And so now we've got a custom component that doesn't do anything. We've just cleaned it up. It's got the name of game. It's got a state machine that doesn't do anything, but have a default state that doesn't do anything. So the first thing we should do is attach this component to our game entity. So with the game entity selected, which you can see here, I'm going to go to new component and custom components and game. If you don't see a game custom component here, it's because you haven't created the custom component file. This is a question. That's a question I've seen quite a few times. So if we build this, we're not going to see anything. That's because our custom component doesn't do anything yet, right? So that's okay. That's totally expected. Let's go over here to our code file and let's copy some stuff. So we're going to want a reference to our character and our enemy. So in this case, it's going to be both Henry and Sharky. And we're just going to copy these from the schema section of the game component. And we're going to put those under schema. And then we're going to go back to our code doc. And we're going to copy the default state. So I'm going to start here at the on trigger and I'm going to go up, go up, go up, go up. Sorry, I'm dealing with a trackpad. And you can see here, I'm just selecting this default state and I'm going back to our code and I'm replacing it in our code with the one that we copied. And there's some stuff that we're going to have to comment out because we haven't implemented it yet. So I'm going to select the 3 listeners and the on trigger, and I'm going to do that command / shortcut to comment out those things. And then I'm going to save our file, which will format it and clean it up just a little bit. But now we have a custom component that should set our animation clips to idle. But you'll notice our screen just went white. Now, why did that happen? It's because we didn't set the character player or character enemy schema attributes in our custom component here as references. And because we're using those without any sort of checks, whether they're valid or not, when this loads up and it goes to set the animation clip to idle, it's not seeing what you're wanting to set to idle, so it just errors out and turns white. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have these drop downs filled in. And you can either click on the drop down here, or you can drag your character to the field. So for Henry, that's our player character. Let's drag him over, and you can see it filled it in. Or we can click on it, click on the drop down, and just click it there. Now, if we build and refresh, we should see that white screen go away. And we should see our code here from the initial state run, which it does. Nice. So this is very simple code. All it's doing is just saying, hey, for my 2 characters, set them to idle and set their animations to loop. We're just doing this so that way it has a little bit more life to it, so they're not just staring there blankly at each other. We want it to feel a little bit more like heated pirate battle. So now let's think about, okay, now that we've got our 2 characters idling, we need to, one, create some way for the player to make their choice, because right now there's no way to choose rock, paper, scissors. It's just 2 characters standing there in this weird heated debate. So let's add some UI, And I know there's a few people in the audience right now going, no, not UI, anything but UI in Studio. I promise you it's not that bad. We've done a lot of work to improve it recently, and we're still working on it. And I'm going to show you some tricks to working with UI a little bit easier. So, um, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and download our icons. So if you go to the I think it's, do we have the assets folder somewhere? I think it's in here, right? Where's the, sorry, Zoom is like taking up my whole screen and I have such limited laptop screen space. Okay. If you go here to the assets folder that's provided for you by Pablo, I've added three icons here, rock, paper, and scissors. So you can just download those. So that's what I'll do now.
I just realized that George created them. So you all, if let me know if you're not seeing them because sometimes there's an issue with
Mm,
emails sharing to everyone.
yeah, and also I got those from gameicons.net. So if you want to change them out for any other icons, feel free. I mean, we can probably like look up like Alien Blaster or something, and I don't know, you can make your alien version. Um, the only important thing about using icons from icons.net is you have to include the attribution for the icon for each icon that you use if you decide to publish your game. Sometimes you'll see this in our sample projects where in the README we'll have like blah 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 icon by John Icon or something. Um, but yeah, so that aside, let's go back to our project and let's upload the icons we're going to use. So I'm going to upload um, the rock, the paper, and the scissors. The amount of times I have to move Zoom is more than one and more than I want to have to deal with. Okay, so now we've uploaded our icons. We can click on them to see them in Studio. And now let's build out a little UI. Let's have our three icons side by side on the top of the screen. So the way that I'm going to do this is fairly simple. I'm going to click on the plus button. I'm going to go to UI element and I'm going to say frame. And if we zoom in here, we can see, okay, that just gives us a gray box. So by default, the frame, all UI elements are in 3D space because if you put them in overlay, they're going to disappear because there's currently no way to preview an overlay UI, which is a type of UI that's like attached to your screen. So no matter where you're looking, you see it. Uh, versus like 3D, which is like something in the world itself. So in this case, let's just work on it in 3D so we can preview it, and then we'll switch it to overlay at the end. So we've got our frame, but we want to lay out three icons side by side on the top of the screen. So in order to do this, we're going to add the layout property on the frame. So I just clicked here under select property, and there'll be an option for layout, and it'll add this. So the really nice thing about this layout option is that now we can say, okay, I want all of my children of this object to be aligned at the top center, and I want them to be horizontal. And we can even add a little bit of padding or a gap or a margin, but let's add our icons first so you can visually see that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a single image UI element, and you'll see it because it's the checkered boxes here. And then I'm going to drag it to be a child of the frame that we just created. And now I'm going to set this image to have the color as an image that we've uploaded. So in this case, let's start with rock. So I'm going to go here to the image with it selected, go to color, and then this white box here, if you click on that, you'll be able to choose an image. So we'll say rock, and let's call this rock button. And then let's duplicate this 3 times. So rock button, paper button, scissors button. And we'll see here, hey, they actually laid out horizontally for us. Okay, cool. So let's just change our icons. paper, scissors. Now you're thinking to yourself, okay, but this gray box doesn't really show me how this is going to look on the screen. And remember, we're working in 3D mode, so we need to set the gray box to be the size of the like phone that we want to preview, right? So what I do when I'm working on complex UIs or just UIs in general is I find the dimensions of the device I want to test with. So you'll notice I just opened up the simulator, and with this little drop down here, it has the list of dimensions. So for this case, iPhone 15 Pro, let's do 393 by 659. So 659. And we can see here, okay, so this is what it's going to look like on the phone if we switch this to overlay UI mode and we change it to 100% width and height. So this is a good way of previewing your UI if you want to see what it's going to look like before you switch it to overlay until we get in the overlay preview. So now that we know that this is what our UI is going to look like, let's add a little bit of spacing between these buttons so it's a little bit easier to make sure you click the right button. So with the frame selected, let's go to this gap property and just increase it. So I'll increase this to 32. And then I'll also add wrap content just so that way these buttons will never go off the screen. This is going to make sure that instead of pushing them off the screen, they'll actually like fit themselves to the screen, maybe even make like a triangle, just depending on the size of the screen. Um, but ideally it won't affect the like actual gameplay. So now that we've got our frame with our three buttons and the gap between them, let's change the opacity of the background frame to be 0. Or sorry, let's change let's actually remove this background property because we don't need it. And let's go to our UI, our frame. Let's change it to overlay. And rather than keeping these values hard coded to specific dimensions, let's just change it to 100%. So you'll notice I'm actually able to type in a percent sign here. This is a question I get sometimes is how do you do that? It has to be an overlay UI mode. And when it's in overlay UI mode, you can actually say 100%. So no matter what size the screen is, this could be displayed on a billboard. It will be a 100% size of that screen. And so if we build now and we press play after this is done building, we'll see our UI. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our 3 buttons. We're ready to go. So before I include this in our code, I just want to do a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to select our frame and I'm going to change the name of it to UI. And I'm going to drag it just above our characters, but below our game controller. None of this stuff is going to affect the functionality of the UI, but personally, I like to do it just to keep everything organized. That way, if you come back to this project in 6 months, then you actually know what all these things do. So now that we've got our UI set up, now we can go in here back to our code folder or back to our code file, and we can grab the 3 pieces that let us reference these buttons. So I'm going to copy these: button rock, button paper, button scissors under schema. And just like how we did with our characters, I'm going to paste those in. And under game, we're now going to see these options show up. And just to prevent future errors, let's make sure that we assign these. So rock button, paper button, scissors button. And now we can uncomment out these listeners because these listeners are what actually listen for these click events on the buttons. So let's go down here and let's uncomment out our listeners. But you'll notice we don't have our handle choice function. So this function is what's going to handle the choice for the player and the enemy. So this is a function that's defined right above the default state. If we go here to our code folder or our code file, we can just select this whole function plus the end bracket and copy it. And we're just going to paste it the same place it was in the code file. We're going to do it right above this default state inside of the state machine. And we're going to comment out this line that's red, and we're going to save. And let's just kind of talk about what this piece of code does. So when I click, so we can see here, let's just kind of talk about this visually. When I click the rock button, handle choice 0. When I click the paper button, handle choice 1. When I click the scissors button, handle choice 2. So because all these buttons technically do the same thing, but with just different choices, we can have one function that handles the player's choice. That's what the input argument is here, which is a number between 0 and 2. Now we can say, okay, when the player makes their choice, before we do anything, let's have the enemy make their choice as well. So the way enemy choice works is we start with a random number, and the way JavaScript has this API, it's a random number between 0 and 1. So that means 0 0.1, 0 0.3, 0 0.4. So the first thing we need to do is make sure it's a random number between 0 and 3, or sorry, 0 and 2. That's because math.random is non-inclusive, I think is the term. It just means that it will never actually be 1. It'll be 0 0.9, etc. So what we're doing is we're multiplying this times 3, and we're saying, hey, give us a random number between 0 and 2, and then take that whole result and floor it, which is rounding down basically. So this means that we're not going to get some weird choice like 1.5 or 2.9 or something weird. We're going to make sure that the enemy's choice is a number between 0 and 2. This is a very common little snippet of code. It's a clamped random choice. So now, once we have the enemy's choice, now we can set the data attribute for player choice and enemy choice. Now, if you'll notice, we haven't actually put that in our data, so let's do that. Let's go back to our code here, and you'll see here under data, we've got player and enemy choice. So these are actually numbers that we're saving in the data of the component. The difference between schema and data is not exposed the same way schemas are, or schema attributes are. So for example, player choice, you're not going to see it here as like a drop down, and you can't access it like outside of this component. Um, so this is specific to the component. It's something that the component manages itself. And so, okay, now we have a way to save our player and enemy choices, and that's what this line 28 does, is it says, okay, save player choice and save enemy choice to the data attribute. And then console log the two choices. Now, let's uncomment out this two cooldown trigger, and let's also uncomment out this two trigger, two cooldown on line 60, because we're going to create a new state that's basically the cooldown state. Um, Now, I created this as a way to basically have a minute so that way you can see the two choices that both the player and the enemy have made, and you can process it yourself before it's just instantly like an animation happens. In your case, maybe you'll have it so like there's, I don't know, like a icon comes up from both characters, and it's like, this is what you chose and this is what you chose, and now the fight begins. But this is also how we can just kind of break our game down into more states and more steps more granularly. So how I'm doing this is I'm creating a trigger. A trigger is just something that lets you go from one state to another when this thing is triggered. So this handle choice function calls this trigger after the choices have been made. Um, and then this line on line 62 says, when this trigger happens, go to the cooldown state, which we haven't defined yet. So I'm going to go back to our code. And now we can just copy this very short cooldown state, which literally all it does is just serve as a way to say, hey, wait 1 second and then go to the action state. So, like I said, this is literally just a transitionary state. Purely exists for like if you want to do something before the characters do their animations. Um, So now that we've got our cooldown state, now we can copy this action state. Now this action state is where all the fun happens. This state is basically checking, okay, uh, who won, and whoever won, uh, they get to play the bonk animation, and then whoever lost, they have to play the I'm scared animation. Or if it's a draw, they'll both agree, okay, we're not going to hit each other. And so we'll go down this line by line, same how we did with the other state. But let's save this and take a look. So on enter of the action state, get a reference to our player and enemy characters. Also get a reference to our choices. If it's a tie, set the animation clip to go, nope, we're not gonna hit each other. And if you're curious about how I found these animation clip names, if you click on the character in the assets folder here, and then you go to animation clips, you can see. And then if you press the play button. So in this case, they're just gonna both go, nope, we're not gonna hit each other. Or for example, let's say I don't know, they'll do the sword animation. That's this like bonking animation. Um, so if you're curious how I came up with those, they're actually like a part of the model itself. So this is what happens if there's a tie. They both go, nope. If the player wins, the player plays either the sword or the punch animation randomly. So that's these two animations. Um, if the enemy wins, then it's the other way around. The enemy plays the sword or the punch animation. We listen for when the animation is finished, so that way we go back to idling on both characters, and then we wait 300 milliseconds before going back to letting the player make another choice. So this is just looping our game back to the top and saying, okay, now you can play again after all this stuff is done. So um, if we run this, we should actually have a fully playable game of rock, paper, scissors, I think. Okay, cool. So our two characters are here. Let me choose scissors. Okay, so you can see there for a minute. I chose scissors. The enemy must have chosen rock because they got to bonk me in the head. Um, but you can see what I mean by it's a little confusing of who made what choice. So in the other version of the game I made it so the choice shows up above the head. That's something we can do if we want to, but I figure we can take some time now to do some Q&A or make any changes or suggestions people might have. What do you think, Pablo?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up the majority of the game. I'd love for you to go through the publishing before we jump to Q&A. We still have a little bit of time there. So
Okay.
yeah, if you have any questions leading up to that, please use the Zoom Q&A now, and we'll get to them in about, I think it should only take you like about 2, 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, I don't even think publishing is going to take that long. So one of the nice things about publishing on Eighth Wall is it's very, very easy. Um, Now, instinctively, you might go, okay, well, let me hit publish. And you'll notice that the only commit here is when we initialize the empty project. So this works a lot like source control and not like I don't know, some other non-source control thing. Um, but the important thing here is you have to land your changes before you can publish them. So I'm going to click this land button, and this is going to have a basically summary of everything I've done since I've last landed. So I'm going to add a message, made a pirate game. And then you either have the option land and publish or land files. In this case, I'm just going to do land files just so we can show you the whole publishing flow. And when I say whole publishing flow, I mean 3 text boxes. I think 2 text boxes and 1 image box. But you can also, spruce this up as much as you want to add this to your public profile on Eighth Wall and really just make this stand out and shine. So you'll notice once I've landed my changes, that land button is no longer clickable because it basically means all the changes I've made thus far are committed and ready for publishing. So now if I click this publish button, my commit shows up here, and you have two choices. You can either publish it to staging, which means it's locked behind a password. This is helpful if you want to like share it with your friends or something before it goes public, and you're like, hey, try out my game. The password is 123 pirate or something. Or if you're ready for it to be public, you can click public, and it actually doesn't matter if both of these are selected because it's two different links. Um, but yeah, so in this case, let's publish it to both staging and public and click publish. And you'll get uh, the option to give it a title. So let's call this Pirate Draw. You'll give it a cover image. I definitely suggest putting some thought and time into your cover images because that's really what makes your game stand out. Um, and if you do decide to showcase this on your profile, you don't want just a bunch of default cover images. Um, all of the most memorable games I've seen all have nice cover images. And then for the description, a simple rock, paper, scissors game made in a workshop. And now we can click done. Let's see. Awesome. Our project has been published. So if we click on this publish link, we have our option to play the game. And now we can make our choices, and we can duke it out. So yeah, that's how to publish a project on Eighth Wall. Super simple. Um, and the nice thing is that publishing, it's all free. You get free hosting. And so now you can share this game with the world, and didn't cost you anything. Um, yeah, so I encourage everyone, if you make something, please publish it and share it on the Discord. I love when people share stuff. I love when people publish stuff. So publish it. I don't care
Definitely.
if you don't like it, publish it.
George, do you mind opening up the featured page while you're sharing your screen? Because there's two things there that I'd love to go over. Once you've published, this part of it doesn't actually show up in your publishing workflow, but if you go over to the featured project tab, there's a
Mhm.
couple other things that you can add there, and two in particular that might help you with your submission for the game jam. One is the video. You're making a video anyway, right? So we require a 1 minute video link for your submission. So you might as well add it here to your featured page. And then there's also additional image gallery. So here's where you will add in some GIFs, maybe some images of actual gameplay so that you can showcase your work there. And all of these files are also great for us to have because if you win, we often go here to download all of those assets and make the promo for your game. So you're doing us a favor on top of making your featured page look really great. So
Yeah.
definitely that you go here and go through all of those. Uh, yeah, just fill all of that out.
Yeah, featuring your project is a little bit different than publishing it because featuring it actually lets you have it on your profile on Eighth Wall. But additionally, it also lets you do stuff like make it clonable or add a launch button. So I would expect everything you make to have a launch button. But clonable, totally up to you. But it's really nice if you want to make something that other people can clone, or if you want to make your own sample projects, go for it. I encourage you to do it. Um, that's one of the nicest things about Eighth Wall, right? Is we have such a strong community and talented developers. And yeah, I encourage everyone to share everything you make, add it to your profile, really spruce up your profile. Because it's awesome if someone's like, "Hey, I'm looking for an AR or game developer, AR developer, whatever." Show them your Eighth Wall profile. Boom, you're
Hmm.
ready to go.
Yeah, it's a great little mini portfolio to have. Alrighty, so now let's jump into the Q&A. I did see one arrive via the chat. Just gonna get this one out of the way, and then we'll move over to the actual Q&A. Kimi asked, "Can you add audio into Studio?"
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know if let me see what audio clips I have, because I might not have any good audio clips, but
Yeah, in a previous workshop, I believe we went over how to add. I think it's actually the very one of the very first studio workshops, Jamaica went over how to add sound effects to different elements. Um, so yeah, there's definitely a variety of different ways that you can do that, and then code it in so that at certain actions you get
Hmm.
sound effects.
Yeah, I don't have any like sound files ready to go,
Mhm.
but the idea behind it is actually, you know what I have? Let's see. Did I publish it? Guides, audio. Boom. Okay. If you go to our docs, there's actually a whole section, how to play a sound effect, right there. Because I've gotten this question a bunch of times. So I added it to our docs. Boom, your question's answered. If it doesn't work, let me know. But it should.
Yeah, awesome. The more questions we ask George, the more work he does to update the doc. So please keep those questions going as it ultimately makes development a little bit easier. All right, so now let's jump over to the Q&A. So we have a question from Siasa. Pre-made animations that are included with the GLTF files, and the animation clips are provided by the capabilities of Eighthwall. Is it possible to add VFX?
So to answer that first question, all the animations are pre-made animations. Yeah, so these are made by the artist here. And so, like I said, if you go to the animation clip section on the GLTF, you'll see what animations they're exported with. For example, if you go and grab some model off of Sketchfab or something, likely it's going to come with some animations. But yeah, these are specifically game assets which are intended for games. So they come with like nicely labeled variety of animations. Um, but yeah, let me know if that answers your question. Do you want me to just go down this list, Pablo?
Yeah, I mean, you have it, so go for it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you define the end game conditions? That's a great question. So keep in mind this is your game. So in the case of, let's say you're thinking, okay, I want it so after one person wins 3 times, the game is over. I would go into my game component, I would create a new state, and I would call it winner. And then I would make a new trigger. And let me actually expand this a little bit so you're not just trying to squint and decipher what runes I'm typing. Um, I would create a new trigger and I would say const to winner is equal to ECS define trigger. And then under actions, I would say on trigger winner, winner. And then I would keep track of how many times somebody's won. So player wins, just I32. Enemy wins, just I32. And then I would um, go here, and in the actions, I would set the data attribute for whoever wins. So in this case, it's player wins. So I would say player data attribute, EID, player wins, and we actually should probably use mutate. And like I said, all this stuff is recorded. So don't worry if I'm like going way too fast for you. That's okay. It's all recorded. You'll be able to take a look at it, freeze it, slow me down to 0.001 if you need to. But yeah, the idea here is I'm just saying um plus equals 1 is I'm just adding to the counter depending on who wins. Enemy wins. And then we'll say yeah, if and then down here you would just check, okay, if enemy wins, player wins is equal to data attribute I get EAD. If enemy wins or player wins is more than or equal to 3. The winner got trigger. So if either person wins more than 3 times, go to the winner state. Um, I'm fairly confident this would work without even without even testing it. But that's how I would approach this conceptually. Um, hopefully that answers your question. Is it possible to add VFX? Are you talking about like particles and stuff? Definitely. Is it easy to configure right now? No. Would I would I would I recommend doing it? Yeah. Uh will you have to beat your head against the wall a little bit right now? Yeah. Um but it's very similar to how if you go here like playing a sound effect, it's very similar to how I would do it here, only instead of audio, I would use a particle emitter. How can we test the game on phone? That's a great question. So if you go down here to God, it feels like I have to move 300 different Zoom windows to get to a button. If you go down here to connect device, this is a button a lot of you are familiar with, but it's probably moved since the last time you used it. We moved it down here. Connect device. If you click on this, you should be able to scan this QR code with your phone and test it out. Um, in the UI, the horizontal button shown in a different order than the order, for example. This is a known bug. It should be based off of the order that you place it in the hierarchy. If it's not ordering properly, um, there's not much you can do about it really right now. Purely just because we don't have a way to override ordering. This is something that the team is working on though. Um, so let me know if that continues to be a blocker and maybe I can work to figure out a workaround. Is it possible to write custom shaders in eighth wall? Yes, there's a whole sample project on it. Come on, come on. Shaders, animated shaders, boom. This is all written in shader code right here. 3JS shader material. This is how to do it.
Yeah, so for that, I'll drop the link in a second, but you can keep going, Joe.
How to easily test it on VR XR headset. Not currently possible to test a project on a headset. If I'm building for a client and they want to own the game, how do I do that? The client creates a workspace on Eighth Wall, invites you as a part of their team, and then you'll be able to work on projects in that workspace. That is the recommended workflow for this process on Eighth Wall. I don't recommend hosting your client's projects yourself as the developer, because then that puts you in a very difficult place for if there needs to be billing changes or account changes or anything like that, or God forbid something happened to your account. I always recommend that if you're working as a developer, the person you're working for create a workspace on Eighth Wall and they invite you to it. How to add Google Analytics? That's a great question. I don't think we have time to answer that, but the idea here is that you would create a custom script tag and using JavaScript, and you would add that to your project as a custom component. I think I've answered this question on the forums. So if you go to our forums and just type in Google Analytics or something, you'll find the answer to that question. If you don't, post it on the Discord. I can take a look later. Um, how to fix shaky experience on the phone? It really depends. I'd have to see a video of what you mean by shaky experience. Likely you have likely you're pointing the phone. If this is I'm assuming you turned on world effects for the project. Like you went here to camera and then you clicked world. Assuming you did that, it's likely that the surface you're tracking on just is like too reflective or has too much repetitive patterns or something like that. Um, worst case scenario, post a video on the Discord or the forums and I can take a look.